Welcome to my apiary. This has been a very important project that has been pushed to the back of the line way too much. I've not put my wife's winter tires on. These tires are actually pretty good. I drove this car to Selkirk recently, and I was really surprised and very pleased with how these tires acted in the winter on the ice and on the snow. However, we have some much better snow tires for her, and I want her to be able to take advantage of those. You can hardly see them here. They're just a snow and an ice tire, actually. An ice tire, what people in warmer climates might not understand is that when a rubber compound gets cold, and it doesn't have to be very cold, like colder than 5°C, certainly below 0°C, the rubber gets very hard. And so if you're driving on dry pavement and that rubber is hard, it's still going to have reduced traction. But if then you're driving on snow and, heaven forbid, ice with that reduced traction, you might as well be driving on skates or steel wheels or something. It's very low traction. So an ice tire, in the old days, we used to stud tires. You can still stud tires, but it's not necessary as much anymore. We used to put metal studs in them so that they would have a metal, it's almost like a screw sticking out of the tire that would bite into the ice. Those are hard on the roads, and one of the big disadvantages to a studded tire is that it actually has a reduced traction on dry road, because you're driving with a component of steel material on the pavement instead of just rubber. So there's a downside too. These are what's called an ice tire. The compound is very soft, therefore they don't last as long, not as many miles, but we've run these for a few years now and they're still really good. And the point about them is that they stay soft in the cold weather. So when you're driving on ice and snow, sub-zero temperatures, today it's minus 22 outside, and this compound is going to stay soft. I can feel it right now. It's very soft in the warm building here. So that's really what I need to get done here. I need to do an oil change at the same time on this car. And it'd be nice if I get my truck in here after the car is done. I have a couple of little repairs that I'm putting off because it's cold weather, and some of them I can't do in the cold weather. When you work with plastic panels and stuff, they just break. You can't do that in the cold. This is a 2017 Hyundai Santa Fe. It's the sport model. It has the 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine in it. It's an all-wheel drive car. Boy, we love this car. This is just a spectacular car. In the winter, you get those winter tires on and the all-wheel drive, etc. You can't make this car spin or slip or slide. You can, but you'd have to be a real idiot to do it, because even normal driving in the winter, it just sticks to the road. It's a fantastic car. Highly recommend this car. And even besides, we just love this car. It's been very reliable. It's needed no service. I think I changed the battery in this car last year. One of the big problems with the battery, again, at a cold weather thing that people from warmer climates might not experience, is if the battery in a vehicle is low when the really cold weather hits, and I'm talking, much below freezing, certainly minus 10, minus 20, minus 30, if a battery's not charged well, like if there's a parasitic drain in the car, for some reason it gets drained by accessories, or if the battery is just a little bit older and it doesn't hold a charge as well, and that battery gets very, very cold, it'll freeze, and then that battery's done. It's junk. It won't hold a charge at all after that. So I think that's what happened to this battery. I think it got a parasitic drain of some kind, and it was low. This was my wife's commuting car before COVID, and since COVID, she's been working at home, so she really doesn't drive it very much. But I insist that she have a good car when she needs one. If she needs to go somewhere, she needs to have a good car. So yeah, so it sat a lot and not being used, so not having that charge cycle from the engine. And I think the battery went low, and last winter the battery just went flat and froze and was no good at all. So I replaced it. And oh, was I ever surprised. This car has what's called an AGM battery. It's different. I don't know exactly how, but it's different from a standard lead acid battery that's in most vehicles, or has been in most vehicles until now. And it's a $350 battery in this car. I couldn't believe it. It's just insane, the price. So anyway, it's got a new AGM battery in it, and I bought a battery maintainer for it. You see these cords hanging out of a Canadian car. You think they're electric cars. Well, they're not. This big one here with the three prongs on it is a block heater. Just keeps the engine a little warmer in the very cold weather, so it'll start nicely and not wear the engine. Like engines nowadays, they typically they'll start, but it's really bad for them to start them cold like that. So block heater will make your engine last longer. It's far better for it. So this little one with the 2 prongs, that's my trickle charger. That's my battery maintainer. So when I plug the car in, if we're not intending to use it, then I'll plug in just the battery maintainer. So that'll protect the battery. If the battery's charged, doesn't matter how cold it gets, it'll be fine. But if it goes flat, then it's going to ruin it. And then if we anticipate using the car, we'll plug this in. And how long do you have to plug it in? Well, if it's extremely cold, you'd want to give that 2 to 4 hours of block heater time before you use the car. And I'm kind of old, so I remember cars in the 70s that had big engines and small batteries and no synthetic oil and all that kind of stuff. So that's where I was raised. So it wasn't a matter of being better for the car by plugging it in. It was a matter of having an 80% chance of your car start if it was plugged in, and a 0% chance it's going to start if it's not plugged in. So that's kind of the world I grew up in. It's a different today. Synthetic oils, way bigger batteries in cars because there's more electrical accessories in cars. So way bigger batteries and smaller engines. Everything was a great big V8, big 6 and 7 liter engines back in my day. I think I've got a battery maintainer on just about every vehicle now. I've got one on my pickup and one on the van, one on the big truck. Especially things that store, like that van. I don't use it very much, so I park it off to the side. I don't want to plug the block heater in, sit and run forever. Those are a few hundred watts. I think they vary between 450 and 750 watts. So they'll use some power. Same with the 1 ton. The battery maintainer will be plugged in, but not the block heater, because I don't use the 1 ton very much in winter. And if I need to use it, I know I'm going to need to use it a few days in advance. So then I'll plug that in. Anyway, enough about block heaters. I'm stalling because I'm tired and I'm sore and I don't want to do this project, but I need to do this project. What's really stupid is last winter I was going to change the oil in my truck, and I didn't because all my oil containers my oil drip pan and everything was out under a snowbank, and I couldn't find it. And guess where my oil container is now? It's out under a snowbank. It's out there all summer, and it's still out there under a snowbank. Oh, I can't believe how stupid I can be sometimes. All right, I've got this tire changed. I haven't torqued those lug nuts yet. So I'm inflating the winter tires. There's just some cheap steel rims for winter. And I'm inflating them to proper pressure using my nice made in USA Milton inflator. Got a nice locking end on it. Nice 6-foot hose so you don't have to stoop over the entire time when it's on the car. I mean, here it's not a big deal. So this is the summer tires. And okay, so we've got steel rims. We've got some alloy rims. You call them aluminum. You can call them magnesium if you want. Probably not magnesium. Years ago they used to call them anything that wasn't a steel rim, they call it a mag because they're made of magnesium. Very light. Regardless, it's not steel. So they tend to rust to the hubs. The steel rims don't rust to the hubs as much. Anytime you have disparate metals touching, there's corrosion because there's a I forget the term. It's electromagnetic corrosion. There's molecules moving from one to the other. And while it's off, we can do a brake pad check here. The camera doesn't focus, but I can see there's a little bit of pad there, and there's a little bit of pad there, but this is going to need a brake job by spring. We don't drive it much, so it's not a big deal. If I'm just changing a tire, I don't bother with a jack stand. The jack is enough because I'm not going under the vehicle. Oil change, however, I've got the vehicle supported on my jack stands because I'm going to have to slide under there, find that drain plug, etc. And by the way, I didn't show you doing this, and I'm not recommending you do it. Those rims were, you see I greased that last time, and the rims are sufficiently frozen to those steel hubs. So I lean this piece of plywood up there, and I put it over here on the tire, on the outer reaches of the tire, of the rim. But I want to hit the rim because the tire just bounces. And then I take my sledgehammer and I whack it. You'll be really careful doing that because alloy rims, you'll break them very easily. I think it's oil change time. I have to find something to put oil in. Back in the day, we had a barrel of 5W30 and a barrel of 10W30 because that's all the farm used. Today, it seems like every vehicle wants a specific oil. And we have synthetic oils now and different grades. My red half-ton used a very specific 5W20, I think. And my big diesel, I put a diesel oil, a heavier diesel oil in that. So, tip for old guys like me, I buy my oil, I write on it what I bought that for. That way if I die, my wife will know too. And you buy the filter, right, 2017 Santa Fe, on the filter. So this is what I think is a nice 5W30 full synthetic. This is a little turbocharged engine. Synthetic is recommended. I like synthetic anyway. Synthetic gives you far better winter experience because it doesn't thicken up like a dinosaur oil, we call it. So anyway, car's up. I have to find something to put oil in and then find the drain plug and drop it out. I've never done an oil change on this car before, so it's a learning curve for me. I think this is inevitable because this is not my fault. I found a container that was big enough to hold the oil. I cut the top off it. I got it into the car. I got the oil going in it. And everything was all great. Then I realized that container has a hole in the bottom. So now it's a huge mess. Well, it is my fault. If I hadn't left my my oil change pans out in the snow, then maybe I'd have one of those, because they don't leak. But I have a whole whack of fines from the dust collector. I'll make short work of this. Get yourself a feed scoop. They're awesome. Okay, so now I'm cleaning up the mess. I'm not going through all the details of how to change oil, but just a little piece of trivia that you might find interesting. This is a turbocharged engine, and for any oil change, you put this oil filter on, you need to lubricate this this gasket here. If you don't lubricate that gasket, what can happen is when you spin that filter on, the gasket may contact the filter housing, the oil filter housing base, and it may catch and stick to that base. And as you tighten the filter, the gasket can deform and ball up, and then it'll leak. So you lubricate that on this side. It's not lubricated on the side on the filter, so the filter is going to turn that as you tighten that up. The other thing is, you can see I've poured oil in this filter, and because this is a turbocharged engine, a turbocharger is a rather precision little piece of equipment, and the bearings in a turbocharger are floating in oil pressure. So what I'm trying to achieve here by priming the filter is to get that oil pressure up as quickly as possible to minimize wear on the turbocharger bearing surfaces. There aren't really bearings in it. They're just they ride in oil, so they depend on oil pressure to keep that turbocharger centered. And the one thing you really don't want to do after oil change is start the engine and then rev it. You start the engine, let it run a little bit, watch the oil pressure come up, and then let it run for a while. Check this gasket. If that sucker's leaking, then you got work to do. The drain plug, it's not pressurized, so if it doesn't leak when you put it together, it's not going to leak. So there's a little bit of trivia on oil changes. I've filled this up to the top twice now, and I'm going to put some more in there because it keeps going down through the filter element into the outside of the filter. Well, I've got the hood open. I'll show you my expensive AGM battery and this little, it's upside down, but this little Schumacher battery maintainer that I've got set in here. It's just kind of floating, but it's really not going to go anywhere. And it's wired right in to the battery terminals. You don't want to put something like this in here kind of on a permanent with the clip, alligator clips on the end. Those just, they'll come off, they corrode, they don't contact really very well. So this is a nice little maintainer, amp and a half. And I made a little video about this a while ago. Really goofy thing is it says in the instructions on this to do not use an extension cord. So the product is made to connect to the battery here, okay, and it's got a little bit of cord, not tons. I mean, that's only the length of the cable. And then the power cord, I've got the block heater tied to it here, but the power cord is here, and it's 12 inches power cord. The instructions are emphatic that you are not to use an extension cord with this product. Let that sink in. Okay? So if you were not to use an extension cord with this product, and you pulled this out from under the engine bay over to here, you could get the cord about here to plug into a wall outlet. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what they're saying. No, don't use extension cord, because anybody with half a lick of sense would know that that's impossible. You know, I'm using it as prescribed. It's built to connect directly to the battery. Anyway, that's my little funny story about that thing. It works well, and yeah, I'd use an extension cord. So that's the little 4-cylinder turbo thing. They sure put a lot of meaningless plastic crap on an engine these days. I don't know, cuts down on noise a little bit, I suppose, but makes servicing a little more difficult. You can't see things. I guess keeps prying fingers from monkeying around. Well, the monkey at the dealership caused me problems. He put that filter on, I think, with a wrench, and it sure was tight. And this car has a full body underpan, so there's a little access panel. So you can see that's the access panel plug for the oil filter, and it's up inside there, and there's no way to get at it to grip it from the side to turn it. You have to turn it like this. And I was able to get my wrench in there, but then again, the wrench is to the side, and that was extremely difficult. I had to poke my handle of my ratchet through another hole, push on the end of the wrench while I pulled on the wrench with my other hand, and extremely difficult. So what you need is they make a socket. They make a socket for the end of that filter to turn it. I suppose that's what he used, but you never ever use a wrench to put an oil filter on. You put that thing on there, make sure that it's not oily. You got to grip it, and you tighten that just about as much as you can with your hand without getting stupid. Like, just make it really good and tight, and you're good. Okay, so I have to put this tire on. Kind of clean up my mess a little bit more. Put this tire on, get it down on the ground, then I can start it and check for leaks, because I can't get an accurate oil dipstick reading at this point while it's up on stands. Okay, I just reminded myself these are directional tires. You see how the tread goes like this? That's my cue. They run one direction. And it even says on the sidewall, okay, hard to see here, but it says rotation and the arrow there. And so I've got a 50% chance of getting that right by random choice, and I got it wrong on this one. It says rotation. So if you're going to drive the car backwards the whole time, you'll be okay. But I maybe I should consult with my wife, but I'm kind of assuming she'll drive forward most of the time. Well, off it comes. I haven't torqued it yet, so that's okay. Okay, all four are changed, and I did get them on right. I did, after I realized my mistake about the directionality of this tire, I grabbed that one I was showing you and I threw it on there. I didn't get the nuts on, and then I realized that was wrong too. So I grabbed the last one and put it on there, and it's correct. So they're directional left and right. So these two tires have to go on the left, and the other two tires have to go on the right. And I've left the hood up because I need to start the engine, check for oil pressure, check for oil filter leak, and then check the oil level once I shut it down, and top it up if necessary. I think I'll have to top it up because this engine, I believe, holds a little more than 5 liters, and I have put 5 liters in it. So the remaining task on the tires is to torque those lug nuts. Quick Google search told me that 80 foot-pounds of torque is what that requires. So I got out my fancy, inexpensive torque wrench. I don't know if you can see the marks here, but that says 80 right there. So I want to crank this knob. I don't know if I can go all the way because it gets tight, and I need to hold it. And on here, there's this is the 10s and this is the 1s. So we'll go a little bit further and line up that 0 with that center line, and that'll tell me that I'm bang on 80 foot-pounds. And I'll just show you one There's a short socket. That'll still work. So it's kind of a ratchet, but it's not meant for that. Pull it tight, and it just has an over center click thing. Okay, I'm gonna get a longer socket, put the phone down, finish that job. All right, the car's done. So the car's out and the truck's in. One of my jobs today is to unload the truck. There's a number of different types of items in here. Honey that needs to be stored at different places and whatnot. And I'm a wimp, so I don't like working outside in the cold. And so I thought, you know what? I'm gonna bring 2 little skids in here and sort my product onto those skids here in the comfort of my warm garage. So that is what I'm about to do. And I'll leave my little truck in here to thaw out and dry off too. It doesn't get that opportunity very often in the winter. So there you go. One of the benefits of having to shut down my woodshop projects. Table saw is covered in crap again. Tractor was in and out, taking those tires out. Okay, here we go, unload the truck. This is a window regulator. It's kind of a scissory thing that looks like it could cut your fingers off. And I guess in the right circumstance, it could. Now this project is part of the keep my old truck going as long as I can theme. And so I thought I would video this for the uninitiated. It's a bit of a to-do, but I've done a few of these in my life, and it's really not that bad after you've done 1 or 2. It seems a lot more complicated than it is. What happens here is the motor, I'll take the motor off the old regulator and put it on here. There's 3 bolts. That motor will turn this gear. There's a spring, kind of I don't know, one of the scariest parts is there's a spring here, but the spring doesn't get really heavily loaded, just a bit. And that spring assists the motor in raising the window. The window, let's see, there's a couple of fasteners that go in here on the window glass. So this is kind of ends up being the bottom of the window. And then this track here mounts to the inside of the door. So that's kind of what happens. And then it just gets bolted to the inside of the door with these bolts here. It's 2 bolts on this track and 4 on the regulator body there. So I have to take the old one out, and then I'll bring it over here. We have to transfer that motor and then get all this stuff back in there. When it broke, I had to kind of jerry-rig it so the window would stay up. And then I didn't bother putting the door panel back on. So I've already got it all taken apart here. So here are the window controls. And this is electric window. A lot of vehicles have electric window now. This is a wire that comes from the body. And this is the wire that goes to the motor. I've disconnected that so that the window wouldn't. If you hit the window switch, the glass will hit the bottom of the door and it won't go up again. So I didn't want that happening in the winter. So there's a bunch of bolts here that need to come out, and I'll just get a wrench and start taking things out. Good old 10mm. Winter, this has got to be a job that I've got to finish in one shot because it's cold and I can't leave the window unserviceable. I can't leave it down. It's not serviceable now, but I can't leave it down. So these are those 4 bolts that I showed you a minute ago. Just need an extension is what I need. Wow, I got the granddaddy of extensions here. So this whole scissor mechanism will kind of come together, collapse, and come out through this opening here. Okay, things are starting to move. Window might fall down. Okay, 2 back here. Those 2 are shorter. Okay, it's in the bottom now. Because it broke the way it broke, and I'll show you what happened, but because it broke the way it did, the regulator's not hooked to the window. Just have to get that scissory thing together. Pull it out. So there it is. Now, here's what happened. There's nothing wrong with this at all, except there's some little nylon wheels that go on these here. They run in the track that's on the bottom of the window. And so here's a nylon wheel in that one. And they're 25 years old and they dry up and break. And you can't buy wheels. You just have to replace the assembly for 70 bucks. All right, we'll take this over there. I happen to have some blue tuck tape handy because I'm going to use that to put the plastic inside back together. I don't know if this was a really nice vehicle. Well, it is a nice vehicle, but if you're going to do this, you may or may not want to use a tape like this. This tape is extremely sticky, and you might have a challenge with it. Here comes time to taking it off. Nice thing about this tape is it sticks in the cold. Get that right back up in there. And we'll just put that tuck tape. That should be enough. I'm going to put one more though. So I'm wrapping it around onto the painted surface, but I'm not really rubbing it to make it stick really hard. Doesn't need it, and I may never get it off. The glass isn't too bad. You can always use a razor blade. Okay, put that aside for now. All right, so the window's up. Now I need to go and change things over with that motor. Truck tailgate makes such a really nice workbench. So we got the old and the new. Okay, so the track didn't come out. I think I'm going to take that out. I want to get that broken free. There we go. So this will make them look a little more alike. So kind of alike now. This is in the full up position, so the spring has the least amount of tension on it. I might be able to just demonstrate that. See, I can pull that spring. So if I can, I'm actually going to release it, as the regulator will go pop when I see. See, it's not that bad. It's only stretched from here to there, so it's not like it's coiled up over and over, as long as you have it in the up position. And so I didn't really need that off. However, when I take the motor off, it's going to, it would spring open and kind of startle you. Kind of a carpeted bed, so I don't want to get too much grease all over it. And again, I don't need a new spring. I'll use a new spring anyway, whatever. And are these 10s? Yes, they are. Ironically, like I say, I've done a few of these in my life, but ironically, I've never done a manual window motor regulator repair. And that's not because I work on new cars. I typically work on old cars. Okay, so this is in the full up position, which is the way I want it. And that motor goes down that way. And line up those 3 bolts. I think it was like that, wasn't it? Just like that. Yeah, all the old cars I've worked on have all had power windows. I did the driver's side in this truck about 2 months ago. It took me a lot longer than likely this will take, because I had to sort it out. I hadn't done one of these in probably 20 years. So that should be pretty well the right position to put that spring on. So you can see that it's in a very similar position that it was before. Hook the end and then I'll twist the center in, kind of, sort of, maybe. Need to push it down too. It's in there. Okay, it's in there. So that's kind of the worst part. Everything else is just bolting things together. Okay, the kind of problem is the part that's on the door, or the window, didn't come off. I have to let the window down so I can get at that. Oh yeah, it's a bolt. There's a couple of bolts. I've worked on windows enough, but not enough that I'd ever say that I like working on windows. I really don't. I don't like doing windows, and I don't like doing drum brakes. Disc brakes I don't mind. They're pretty easy. I don't know. You can see in the end of that the remnant of one of those tiny wheels. Okay. Now, I think I'm gonna hold that window up again. Stay there while I get the regulator into the door cavity. Now I need to bring the window down again and put those nuts back on. Looks like I could have gone through the bottom of the door instead of the side. That's really funny. Yeah, it's not so funny. There's not much left of this door. It is comical though. The regulator's coming out the rust holes in the bottom of the door. Throwing good parts after bad here. That's embarrassing, actually. Okay. Go back up. Goodness. And these two bolts, I'm not sure why they gave me two of the four bolts. Oh, I see why now. These two bolts are on keyholes. You don't have to take them out. I did anyway. Just quicker to install. At this point, I needed to turn the truck on so I could run the power window motor. I've connected it here on the electrical, and so now my window control will run the window because the window is not up. It should be, and yet my motor is in the up position. I have to pull that up again. Hopefully that holds. Taking that tape off a few times. So. Okay, so now between this little track in the rear and the window motor, and I should be able to get that up in there. So I can see that bolt here. I'm going to very gingerly move the motor. There we go. And be careful because you get your fingers in the wrong place in there. You could get pinched or cut off. It doesn't move real fast in there, so it's not as bad as you might imagine. There we go. So now I've got a couple of bolts here that, while this is kind of loosey, I can fit these two. I'd be interested to know if I were doing a manual motor, a manual regulator, how would you do that? Could you line things up with the crank, or how would that work? Because that's one of my favorite things about the power window, servicing the power window one. You just hit the button a little bit and it pulls itself along. Is it in there? Never want to tighten all of them until you have, or never tighten any of them until you have all of them in. So now they're all in. These with the keyhole have the most play. So tighten the two without the keyhole and then do those two. I certainly don't need them to include those two bolts because I've got two bolts left over now. I think the door is stamped for both power and manual window operation because there's holes here that aren't used. Okay, so now the little track should go in the back here, and this has two separate. There's two standoffs here, and one pushes farther from the door than the other. And so I took note when I took it out. The thicker standoff is in the rear. And there's a nice locating tab right there. Get them in before you torque them because you'll cross thread them pretty easily. And don't ever think you're going to recover from a cross thread situation. You won't. It just gets worse. Okay, boys and girls, I think that power window regulator is officially changed. Take the tape off and run her down. Boy, I bought this truck, I don't know how many years ago, 10 years anyway, and that window, there was always something wrong with it. I could tell by the way it sounded, but it took a long time to fail. Okay, so now I'm just going to clean up here. I'm going to patch this plastic. That's important for keeping drafts, and it actually helps quiet the cab too. I'm not too concerned about what kind of plastic I use here, as you can tell. I'm just going to use some plastic. Put it right up here. This were a new car, I might care. That's some kind of woven product. Okay, my least favorite part. This thing has got a bunch of little, well, I don't know, little fasteners, little plastic fasteners on the underside. And you're supposed to line those up with the holes. And I don't have good success with them. So quite often I end up not getting it right. And they're very much a disposable thing. I think you're supposed to expect to destroy the little plug when you take the door panel off. Not a big fan of that kind of thing. Take something apart and then it's, oh, I got to order a bunch of parts. Put it back together. Okay. Put that through. Hang it on the lock. And this is the part that's hard. You have to line those up, but I can't see them. I have to get that. Oh yeah, before I do that, I need to get the handle through it. Then on the lock. Yeah, okay, so it's on there. No, it's not at all. And there's a screw there. I need to take that out. There's one screw. Well, there's three screws hold it on. One up here that you can't see near the mirror. And then two on that hand grip thing I took off a minute ago. Okay. It's so hard to see. And if you're saying that you're supposed to put it in the door and hang the door on it, you can't do that because the slots aren't all the same direction, so it's impossible. And I don't know. I get lucky? Oh, I got lucky with those. Go in there once you get it lined up. Okay, I'll put that screw back in by the mirror. Put my grab handle on. Of course, there's only one screw. Oh, there isn't. That one's just sitting down in there. You know, automotive engineers are pretty amazing. I wouldn't expect to build something like this, like that grab handle, for example. It's kind of held in there by the panel that's held in there by the little plastic clips, and with these two Phillips screws. They look like either a number 6, I think they're a number 6 screw. And, you know, say, oh, that's going to last the life of this truck. I would think, oh boy, I don't know. I think something's goofy here, but there we go. I think my battery is down. Yeah, the battery is kind of worn down. Okay, that's it. 2 new regulators in my truck here this fall. That's really nice. So those will work great. I just have to keep up to fixing the rest of the stuff that's wrong with my truck. I hope I can keep up to it. Things start breaking faster than you can fix them, then you've got a big problem on your hands. Anyway, thanks for watching this little project. Have fun.